Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having us here today. I'm Ella, this is Heather, and we're going to talk about work we do as part of Heather's RSE Fellowship, Sustainability and EDI, Quality, Diversity and Inclusion in the R project. Before we get into the presentation itself, I've got the URL for the slides and the repo for the slides. So if anyone and the QR code will take you to the slides if anyone prefers to follow along in their browser. So yes, we are at an R conference. I assume we're here today because we like working with R, and there is a lot to like about that. There's a great community around it. An estimated 2 million people use R. We have 20,000 plus packages at our disposal. That's fantastic, but all of that, all these packages and the like, they all depend on R itself, the base of the language. And by the base of the language, I mean the stuff that we get when we install, as we might do from today onwards, R 4.3. And that, despite the number of people who contribute to packages, that core of the language is written by the R core team, and that's really very few people. And that has led to something of a sustainability problem. Because those who contributed the most to R early on are now near the end of their careers and only partially replaced by new members. So if you look at the graph on the screen here, the darker the color, the more commits on an exponential scale. So the people at the top, people like Brian Ripley, Martin Michler, Kurt Hornick, these are people who are all kind of coming towards the end of their careers. If we look at the graph, we see the kind of the darker colors nearer the beginning, sort of like 1997 through to about 2013, and then we sort of start dropping off in the number of contributions. There are some new people coming in. There are some people you can see who are like Michael Lawrence, Sebastian Mayer, who are kind of been coming in more recent years, but the number of commits that they're making are not replacing the people who have retired or are soon to be retired. And if we look at the graph as well here, some of the names are quite small. I don't know if you necessarily notice on the first read through, but these are all men, and these are all people who are, well, they are largely in the global north as well. And from an EDI point of view, that is also replicated across the package community, people who contribute to packages more generally. So amongst a sample of, I think, 1,500 R packages that are where the code is on GitHub, 88% of those are written by men, self-identified men, and about 84% of those are in the global north as well. So hopefully, I don't need to do too much to convince you that there are benefits to having a diverse contributor community. Research has shown that having a diverse community increases innovation, increases sustainability, and decreases duplication of effort as people work together. But kind of from a personal reflection, being part of a diverse, welcoming community is just a pleasure to be involved in, as opposed to some open source projects that can be actually quite antagonistic, for example, towards women. Working in a language which has a community like Our Ladies, it just feels good. And because it feels good, because it's something that I want to be involved in, it motivates me to contribute. This is a good thing, to have people who really want to contribute. So we would like more people to contribute to R. We would like a more diverse group of people to contribute to R, and therefore there are a number of initiatives under the fellowship to encourage people to do that. So Heather, over to you.
Thanks, Ella. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking a bit about the initiatives that have been going on in recent years to try and address some of those sustainability and EDI issues. And a lot of this work sort of kicked off a few years ago with the establishment of the R Contribution Working Group. So it's just an informal group that was set up in collaboration with members of our core, Forwards, which is the R Foundation task force for members of underrepresented groups in the R community, and other people from the community. It's an open working group, so anybody that's interested in this issue is very welcome to get involved. And we set about thinking, well, how do we tackle this? One of the first things people felt they wanted was a more welcoming space. And so one of the first things we did was set up a Slack group where people could come and sort of ask basic questions and get comfortable with the process of contribution and so on, so that it wasn't so daunting to go through official channels, such as some things I'll talk about later. Twitter and more recently Mastodon to obviously communicate what we're doing. Working on more novice-friendly documentation. So there is a lot of documentation out there, but a lot of it's very technical, very long, spread out in all sorts of places, so it's not easy to navigate if you're just coming into this. Of course, a lot of this work is voluntary often, and not everybody has time to do this, particularly if you're a member of underrepresented groups. There's sort of this disproportionate effect. So we also looked for opportunities to have short-term paid projects to contribute towards this as well. And then sort of community events, particularly aimed at novice contributors. And through all of this, thinking about how we can prioritise engagement with people from underrepresented groups. So in an ideal world, we can address both sustainability and EDI together. So we want people to contribute. What am I talking about though? What do we want people to contribute to? And the two main ways that people start contributing to R is by helping with bugs in some way, or helping with translations. So as this is a very English audience, I guess, may not be so aware of the translations that are provided with R, but a lot of the errors, messages and warnings have been translated into various languages, again, as we'll see in a bit. So one of the first things we did was organise a series of events called the collaboration campfires. And these are just 4 90-minute sessions introducing the idea of contribution, what it's all about. So it was meant to be quite informal, exploratory, interactive, suitable for somebody totally new to the subject. And again, we really made an effort to reach out to groups, people from underrepresented groups, taking advantage of some of the great sort of grassroots organisations like Our Ladies, Minorities in R, Rainbow R, Asia R, Africa R, Latin R. Have I missed anything?
Arab R.
Arab R, thank you, yes. I mean, it's great that the community has really sort of, helped to set up these groups to encourage people from particular demographics. Of course, people don't fit into neat boxes, but it does help to meet together with people that are like you and that understand where you're coming from. So we worked with them to encourage people to come along to this campfire. That worked quite well. What did we look at? Again, the 2 main topics I mentioned before. So starting with bug handling, we explored together R's Bugzilla, which is the bug tracking platform. We made plots like this, sort of just to get an idea of the bugs. So this is a little bit small, but this particular plot is showing that there's about 500 open bugs, and a lot of them, are sort of new or unconfirmed. Those are the first 2 columns. So one way that outside contributors can help is just to sort of confirm that an issue is a bug and really sort of start to sort of narrow down what the issue is, so that our call can then decide if that's something that needs fixing, and then the discussion can happen about how to fix and so on. So we also practice that process of reviewing bugs, looking at a bug report, just identifying what step needs to happen next. That's quite a key sort of skill in order to start getting involved. We also looked at this localization topic that I mentioned, again, exploring the status of translations. So this shows the different languages. So I think there's, about 15 or more languages that R's messages are translated into. So we have some very well-maintained languages like Italian and French at the bottom here. And so the dark purple there is the number of messages, or the percentage of messages that have been translated into that language. And then the lighter purple are fuzzy ones. What that normally means is the English message has changed, and the translation hasn't been updated, so it might not make sense anymore. And there are a few surprises, like Spanish, a very well-used language, obviously, but only about a third of the messages have been translated so far into Spanish. One thing that sort of spun out from this, because we were sort of summarising these translations, we thought, wouldn't it be useful just to have a dashboard where you could look this up? So we had a Google Summer of Code project last year that sort of set up a basic prototype. Unfortunately, the person working on it had to withdraw, so it didn't get too far, and we've proposed it again for this year to hopefully make a bit more progress with this, so the whole community could just sort of see what's the status, what languages need help, and so on. And as well as events, we wanted to think about infrastructure. So one key thing we started working on was that novice-friendly documentation I referred to earlier. So this is the main product of that, the R development guide, which is your sort of, this will probably be very familiar to you, a sort of R Markdown book. Initially we focused on established workflows for bug handling and translations. I keep mentioning, hopefully you're getting that idea. But more recently, we've been sort of extending it to further topics, for example, how to install R from source on different platforms, and alternative workflows to contribute that might be easier for beginners, for example. And one of those sort of new alternative workflows is this new WebLate server that was set up in just last summer. So previously, if you wanted to contribute to your translations, you were literally sort of editing text files. There's sort of a standard format that you would edit and sort of submit a big bunch of those per language. Now we've got this nice web interface, and maybe it's a bit fuzzy, but the different things there are different packages in base R. So you've got the base package, the GR devices package, graphics package, and so on. And you can just hop onto this interface, pick a language, and it will step through the messages that need translating, and you're just sort of filling it in like a web form, and they can all be bundled together in one patch for all the languages at once and committed to R. So it's still a bit experimental. We've had one big patch, and I think one is in preparation, so it didn't quite make it for the latest version of R. But this makes it a lot easier for people to contribute without knowing all the technical nitty-gritty. How are we doing for time?
We've got another 5 minutes.
A bit short, so I'm gonna skip over the Bug Barbecue, which is an event we held last year in combination with UseR, and Translation Hackathon, which was held in combination with the Latin R conference. So this was particularly focusing on Brazilian Portuguese and Spanish, which, if you remember from the plot, were languages with quite low coverage, and this is quite effective in getting people involved in contributing to those languages. This year, coming up, we've got a bigger event, the R Project Sprints, which is going to be a 3-day event, bringing about 50 people together, so quite a bunch of our core members, experienced contributors, and also people with a little bit of experience, maybe who've just interacted with some of those past activities like the collaboration campfires or Bug Barbecue. So we're happy to be able to host this at the University of Warwick. I'm afraid that the deadline for applications has passed, but we will try and arrange some sort of open event, an R user group type event, which some of you might be able to come to at the time. And I'll let Ella tell you a little bit more about how you can get involved going forward.
Yeah, so hopefully this talk serves as a call to action to get involved, and even though something like applications to the sprint have passed, there are a number of things going on now that are open. Heather mentioned the Slack earlier. Really encourage you to sign up to that. The link is at the top. That's actually a link to a page that tells you more about the Slack group, in particular a code of conduct, and posting guides, just to help keep this Slack feeling safe and welcoming. We also have a meetup group, which is where we post about the events that are going on. So if you want to join that to keep up to date with those events. We organise office hours. They run typically on the second Thursday of each month. We run them twice in a day to target different people in different time zones. They are really informal opportunities to work together on any aspect of contributing to R. And doing so has led to bug fixes. There was one bug that we explored that had been lingering on Bugzilla for over 8 years, but because it was picked up for this office hour, we got it fixed. So I would encourage you to come along to those. The next two are happening on May the 11th and June the 8th, and they'll be advertised on the meetup, in the Slack, on the social media channels that we had up on the first slide. Another thing that we've got coming up is a C book club for R contributors. A lot of base R is written in C, so for people who are looking to get kind of further down that road of making contributions to R, or to be able to kind of diagnose those bugs, having some knowledge of the language of C would be really useful. The C book club was originally conceived for people participating in the sprint, but it's open to everybody. It's happening over the summer, starting May the 16th, every couple of weeks. And there are more details about that on the link in that last bullet point if you would like to join and get involved in that. So if there is one thing to take away from this talk, it's this URL here. This is the webpage of the R Contribution Working Group. Pretty much everything that we've talked about today can be found somewhere on that site. So we hope to see you at future events. Thank you very much.